Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of the tutorial on making your very own custom approval workflow add-on. If you've made it through the first 2 videos, this is probably the one you've really been waiting for. So I hope to make it a good one and worth your time. So we're going to be going through the code necessary to develop this add-on. And the first thing we're going to start with is enabling a few of the advanced Google services, because in this code we are attaching Google documents to calendar events. So the only way you can do that is if you enable some of the advanced services. So under Resources, you're going to go to Advanced Google Services, and then go ahead and switch on the Calendar API. And then you also have to go into the Google Platform API dashboard. Just go ahead and click there and then enable the Calendar API. You may need to search for it in there, but it's pretty straightforward to go ahead and enable that. So once you've done that, we can come back to the code here. And I just want to point out that the first few lines of the code are simply adding the functions to the add-on menu in your document. So for example, if I go to add-ons now, I will see the approve and deny functions right here. Moving on to that piece, we'll get to our first function of the code, which is, I'm calling it sign and share. Really, this is just the approval function. The exact opposite of this function is located lower down in the code, the reject and share. And these are all very similar. The only difference is that the rejection will not upload the event to Google Calendar, and of course the body of the email that's sent to the requester will have some disappointing news. So anyway, let's go back up to the top, and if we walk through the code kind of in sequence, the first thing we're doing is we're getting the signature bank. All right, we're locating our signature bank, which is right here. This is our signature bank. And then we are creating a range in that signature bank. So we're locating values of a very specific range. And that's why we're getting the last row and the last column of data. That's for us to be able to draw this type of box around the data and get the values. So we're getting the values. Then we're also going to determine who is actually on the document right now. So right now, this is me. So this is the user right here. That's the account that is on this document. So we want to know who's on it. And that becomes relevant when we get to this loop. So this loop is designed to essentially look for that user in column A. So here, this 0 represents column A in our loop. So when we look down column A, we can see that, yes, the active user does have an entry right here. We can stop the loop. So the loop stops, and then the value that we're logging, and this is just to kind of making sure it's pulling what we want. If we want to look in the logs later, we can, but range N1, this is referring to the row where that username is located, and then column B. So in this case, it's actually just the URL of our approval stamp. So if we were to tie that into the rejection piece, this would be a 2. So I'm just going to scroll down here just to make that connection for you. Here we go. So here's that same loop in the code above, but this time it's getting the rejection stamp because this is column C instead of B. Back to sign and share. So we assign that image URL to a variable because we're going to use this later. And then we're going to also create this blob variable. I'm not very good at explaining what a blob is, but I do know that this is essential for appending an image to a Google Doc. So we do that, and there's some more boring stuff in here. This is kind of key right here. So here is where we are putting the cursor in a place to where we want to apply the signature. So for example, if this is my document, what the script will do is it's going to enter once, because it's going to create a new paragraph, and then it's going to append the signature timestamp and then the approval stamp. So that's essentially placing the cursor at the end of the last element and then doing a return. So that's what we're doing there. This piece of the code is actually creating the timestamp. And I'm going to go down a little bit more. Yeah, this is where we actually append the image. And then the timestamp and username is applied right here. Now that we've successfully appended our image and timestamp signature to the document, we can move on to the next task, which is creating the calendar event. So to create the calendar event, the first thing we need to do is, again, locate some data about that calendar event. So using a technique we've already applied, that sort of loop and break technique, we are going to locate all of the data we need to put this event on the calendar. So again, we're going to reference that spreadsheet, but this time we're using the field trip data sheet. And this again is just an import from the form responses sheet with the document ID in column A, as this is the column that we will be using for our match criteria. So going back to the script, we're going to head to our for loop. And here we can see we're going to look down column A until we find a match in the document ID. So remember, we've already stored the document ID of the active document up here. So we've got that information. So as we go through this loop and we locate a match, then it'll break. So in this case, once we hit the document ID of the Lincoln Memorial trip, that script will stop, and this entire row of data becomes available to us. So we can look ahead and we can see how we're aligning that data here. So we know that the title, this is going to be column C, remember, because column A is 0. So this is the title, and we can kind of see how this is matching up. C, D, E, F, G, H. So we're just filling in the gaps with the data that we need to create that calendar event. Then, of course, you need the calendar ID of your field trip calendar. So you can find this in the settings of your Google Calendar. And we need to create the start and end dates in a special format. So using this technique and then applying the variable that we stored up above, we can create the start and end dates needed, or the start and end time needed for Google Calendar to create the event. And then this goes into adding the attachment, which is again why we enabled the advanced calendar services at the very beginning of this video. And then here's where we're just saying that the event does support attachments. And there we go. After creating the calendar event, we'll then want to inform the teacher or the person requesting the field trip that the event has been approved. And we'll also attach the document in that email as well. So the first thing we would need to do is actually add view-only access to the requester. And then anyone else in school who would likely need to know about this trip. So if there's a co-teacher or another administrator who is always getting this information, you can include their email addresses in a string in this space right here. And here's where we construct the email message. So again, this text, anything within the single quotes here, can be modified. And of course, the doc name would be replaced by the title of the actual Google Doc that has been approved. And there you have it. That is essentially the entire script. Once you've made the rest of the modifications to the script, feel free to give this a try by just going up to Run, Test as Add-on. And then you can go ahead and establish that test and ensure that your code is working as expected. There it is. Thanks for watching, and in the next video, I will be showing how you can deploy this add-on within your organization.